Little Nightmares is a game full of disturbance, mystery, and more disturbance. The Moor, which is where Little Nightmares takes place, is actually a perfect embodiment of the game itself. It appears small on the outside, but it's packed with an endless number of components that make it so much more interesting. Hi, I'm Scotty. Welcome back to Rating and Review, where I dive into all of your favourite games with a keen eye and look for all of the qualities and characteristics that make the game what it is. At the end, I'll give it a final rating, which will then be put on the leaderboard so you can see every game I've rated and where it places against others. Now, let's get right into the video with story. Warning, spoilers ahead. The story behind Little Nightmares is not everything it seems to be on surface level. You follow a little girl called Six who fights her way to escape the ship she's on called the Moor. Throughout, you'll encounter enemies and locations such as the janitor in the prison and the chefs in the kitchen, both of which will do everything they can to stop Six from escaping. There are also friendly creatures called gnomes that Six will encounter on her journey. Even further on, she comes across the guests of the Moor, who are gluttonous humanoids that feast on the meat that is seemingly prepared for them by the chefs. At the end of the game, Six defeats the proprietress of the Moor, the Lady, who hosts supernatural powers which she then consumes after defeating her. There are an endless number of theories for this game, even more so now that Little Nightmares 2 is out. This may be an issue for players who don't wish to delve deeper than surface level after completing the game. You are faced with a simple story, and if you don't want to know more than what you are presented with, you are left with the story of a girl escaping a deranged ship. This isn't so much of a negative critique because the game is primarily focused on gameplay and atmosphere, but unless you are invested enough, then you may be missing out on some interesting storytelling. Made up of mostly puzzles, stealth, and chase sequences, Little Nightmares proves to be a unique 2.5D platformer. Six is equipped with a lighter immediately at the start of the game and has to use it without even walking a few steps. The lighter was very easy to equip and turn on to light your path, but the only issue I had was how often you have to manually turn it back on. Every time you jump and climb, it turns off by itself, which is fine, but I only wish that Six would automatically turn it back on after doing those actions. It's something small, but it does become slightly irritating throughout your journey. The lighter also doubles down as a tool to save your game whenever you come across an empty lantern. I found this an interesting way of saving your progress, as the game already auto-saves frequently by itself, as well as saving at the end of every chapter. It's a nice added feature, but wasn't entirely necessary. The game's controls are perfectly fine with only a couple buttons of your controller being used. Running, pulling, climbing, and turning on your lighter are all very easy to do, with nothing that can't be picked up easily by novice players. The ability to turn your camera is also a welcome feature, as it sometimes can be difficult to follow a path due to depth perception. Now moving on to the main components of the gameplay: puzzles, stealth, and chase sequences. I typically do not have a good relationship with 2D platformers, as I find the puzzles tend to become so difficult and tedious that it just becomes a chore. But Little Nightmares is different. The puzzles mostly had me engaged, whether they were simple or a bit challenging. Of course, there are a couple that will have you building frustration, but I don't think it's enough to be a problem. Secondly, the stealth is one of the best components in the game. Crawling under tables and sneaking your way past enemies is so intense and never fails to draw you in, especially during the moments when the main antagonists are attempting to hunt you down. Lastly, the chase sequences are also absolutely unforgettable. The feeling of being chased by beings that are 20 times your size is heart-racing, and it makes for some of the absolute best moments in the game. The main antagonists are the janitor, the twin chefs, and the lady, with the shoe monster acting as a minor antagonist. Every single one of these characters were terrifying in their own way, and their character design is the same. Personally, the janitor remains the most interesting and terrifying character due to his abilities and design, but the others are not far behind at all. Additionally, gnomes are small creatures that roam the ship but also serve as collectibles for the player. I personally did not seek to collect them because I didn't feel like there was much reward and satisfaction if I did. The moor is a location that is overflowing with horrors that fill the player with insecurity at every possible moment. The dim areas that make up the majority of the location really add to the scare factor, with only the small lighter that Six possesses to light your path along the way. Tarsier Studios amazingly depicted the grim imagery that they were aiming for. The monstrous and unsettling inhabitants of the moor truly feel intimidating and make for some of the most chilling enemies that I've encountered in my own gaming history. On top of this, the Little Nightmares soundtrack truly elevates the horror element with dark music that makes whatever section you are playing feel even more impactful. The Tarsier Studios team stated that the moor is a place where all the worst things in the world could be left to rot. This is very excellently portrayed throughout the game, with the section where you run through and dodge the disgusting guests of the ship living up to that description perfectly. Additionally, the gentle swaying of the ship that you can see whilst playing is an amazing detail that did not go unnoticed. When it comes to atmosphere, there are truly no faults that can be pointed out. I've been playing games for 90% of my life and have played a large handful of horror games. One common trait that most of them have is that they are far too short in length. Little Nightmares stays true to that commonality, but despite the somewhat short length, I didn't finish the game feeling unsatisfied by any means. According to howlongtobeat.com, the main story will take you around 3.5 hours to complete. If you are aiming to collect everything additional, then it will take you around 6.5 hours. I enjoyed how the game was divided into 5 chapters, as each one felt distinctive from the other. So much so that beginning a new chapter felt like starting a new journey with nothing to prepare you for what's to come. With a story that dives deep beyond the surface, Little Nightmares is a game that delivers the horror genre in a way that feels unbelievably fresh and unique. The game possesses simple and easy to learn controls, puzzles that are simple enough at the start but become slightly challenging towards the end, stealth gameplay that is done to perfection, and chase sequences that will leave your heart pounding. The lighter is a nice addition as a way to light your path, but having to constantly reopen it does become tedious. The short length of 3.5 hours may be short for a lot of players, but I found it to be a reasonable amount of time for the game. Furthermore, the atmosphere is one of the best features present throughout, and it will definitely leave an impression on you. And for all of these reasons, I'm giving the game an 8.5 out of 10. This means it currently places second on the leaderboard, just behind Spider-Man that I reviewed last week. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video, I greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed, then please feel free to give it a like and subscribe for all future rating and review videos of all of your favourite games. Thank you again, I am Scotty, and goodbye.